Welcome to Going Forward, where inspiring conversations with leaders and entrepreneurs shape tomorrow. Dive into the depths of their journeys, the hurdles they've overcome, and the insights they bring to the future. Let's get moving right here, right now on Going Forward.
This episode of Going Forward is brought to you by Optimizer, the award-winning PPC management tool trusted by advertisers worldwide. Need to save time and supercharge your ad performance? Optimizer makes managing PPC campaigns on Google, Facebook, Amazon, and Microsoft easier than ever. With automation, smart insights, and powerful optimizations, you'll work smarter, not harder. Try it free for 14 days at optimizer.com/go/VIP and take your ads to the next level.
Welcome, Going Forward Nation. My name is Eric Elliott. I'm your host of Going Forward. And today I got with me a special friend, a special guy, a mentor to many. His name's Raphael James. And I'm going to tell you why we are talking today. You know, I had the privilege of being able to work with Raphael when I was in broadcast media. And if anyone is in the Charleston area, you've seen him, you've heard him, and you know how much of an amazing figure he is in our community. And I just, he wrote a book. And when he wrote this book, it almost felt like he was pouring his heart out into the community. He was kind of telling things about himself that a lot of people just never knew. And I said, Raphael, I want to tap into that side. And we've interviewed people around the world, but I mean, who better to start with than someone who is in our own backyard, Mr. Raphael James. Raphael, thank you for being on the line with us for Going Forward Nation today.
The honor is mine. Thank you, Eric, and Going Forward for inviting me on to have this conversation. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah. For those people, there's going to be a lot of folks that don't know you. I'm going to tell you a little bit about this fella, man. Before anything else, you can call him journalist and all that stuff, but he's an amazing husband and father, first and foremost. Journalist comes second, that comes second. And, a lot of us have had the pleasure, Raphael, of seeing you share your life, share your stories, your marriage, your children, the ups, the downs, like live and in living color now and on Facebook, and you're not afraid to talk about it, man. And we want to talk about that book that you wrote today, man. People were writing books during COVID. You waited post-COVID and you said, I'm going to write one. Tell us why.
Well, it's not that I set out to write a book and you said people aren't afraid to share, or I'm not afraid to share. I am very afraid to share. And the things that I have written and put out there now for the world to see, I really don't want to talk about it. I really had no intentions of talking about it. But I think it's important for all of us to talk, to let some of those things that are on the inside of us out, not necessarily in a public manner, not necessarily for the whole world to see, but I kind of want to be an example of doing it, getting it out, and I think there's healing on the other side. But if we kind of try to tamp down some of those emotions, some of those things we deal with privately, if we try to tamp that down and deal with it on our own, especially as men and Black men in particular, we usually don't get the help that we need that way. It's freeing and it is cathartic to get it out, even if again you don't share it with another soul. You have to first get it out, and that's my overall mission with this book, not just to spill the tea on my personal life, because that's something I really did not want to do. But hopefully, it helps somebody to see another way of looking at the struggle that they're going through, help somebody with another way, and maybe some resources and strategies for how to deal with what they're going through.
Now, you could have named the book anything. Why'd you give it the name you did?
Well, because quite frankly, that's just it. The only reason I started writing was because there were things going on that were heavy that I didn't want to talk about. And my wife, she is a writer, a prolific writer, and she was like, "Look, you really need to go and see somebody." My father was diagnosed with dementia. My only
Yep.
son was diagnosed with autism, and some of his behaviors uh, were detrimental at the time, not only to him, but to the family as well. So having to try to pull the family together and having to try to be there in a limited capacity for my father, who was battling this, and my mother, who was his caretaker, battling this from, out of town, and trying to be a support for them as well. It's a lot. And it's a lot to watch your hero go from super independent, super beloved by the community to not being able to do anything for himself. Those are things I honestly and truly did not want to talk about,
No.
but she encouraged me to write them down, even if I wasn't going to go and speak to somebody, which I think that's a good thing. I think therapy
Yeah,
is
totally.
good if you find the right person. But I said, okay, I'll write it down. And what I found out, I put everything out there in its rawest form. And after I was done, I felt a little bit better. And
Yeah, I was going to
then
ask.
after, yep, yep. After once I put it out there, I felt a little bit better. And then as I would go back to it sometimes and look at it, I began to see some things. It began to open up my eyes as to what I was going through in that moment. And eventually I shared some of those things with my wife, and she's like, this is good. It helped me. And eventually she said, I think this will help somebody else too.
Now, let's talk about like because there's two parts to it. There's going to be like how the book is going to affect the people that are within your circle, and then it's going to be how it's going to affect the people who are without on the outside of your circle, right? So let's talk about the inside of the circle. Because one of the things I've heard you say in other interviews is you had to call mom and get permission and say, "Hey, you're going to see some stuff that you probably never heard from me before come out in this book." I mean, what was that conversation like for you?
Well, in I'm a PK, a preacher's kid. So I grew up in the church, and my parents were in ministry within our church. My father was the pastor, my mom, first lady, and a missionary. And we were in a holiness church, Church of God in Christ. So there's some things you do, and you you have a bar that's set, and there's some things you don't do.
Yeah,
And in life, I if I were going to make this into a book, if I were going to really tell my story, I got to tell the good and the bad. And
yeah,
so that's what I was trying to, I guess, let people know. Hey, what I've written, and this is after my wife and I were okay with it.
mhm,
It was never going to be a book. It started out just being a journal. But once we were both okay with sharing it, then we had the conversations with our family. Hey, uh, some of what you see, and even our inner circle family didn't know everything, all the hell that we went through with, you know, the family dynamic and the shift that I worked at the time, trying to be there. At times, my wife was almost a single parent because when these behaviors would take place were predominantly at night. Well, I'm the
yeah.
evening anchor at the time. I'm not at home. I'm not in the house. And, it stop me if I ramble, but that
No,
is
I want to hear it. I want to hear it.
those are some of the stories. Those are some of the things that nobody knew. And those are some of the things that were hurtful. Those were some of the things that I didn't want to talk about. But after I had written everything out, it began to hit me. You asked about the title. If nobody is talking about it, then everybody's going to go through life feeling like they're alone. So I don't want that to happen. If there's somebody else going through my set of circumstances, I'm I'm here. I'm going through the same thing. I'm here. You're not by yourself. This is what I've done that was effective. This is what I did that was a total mistake. Please don't do that. I'm offering that to the world so that people don't feel so alone as they go through this. I don't know if you remember a while back, there was a video circulating of a young lady who was walking through her house sobbing, taking pictures with their cell phone where a child, her son, I believe, had, or grandson even, had gone and destroyed the house. I mean,
Mm.
straight destroyed it. Broken televisions, broken toilets, you name it, it was destroyed in that house because she told the child that he couldn't have his iPad. And that hurt me because I felt that.
Yeah.
I have personally lived through situations like that. I know what it's like to have to repair holes in the wall because of um, spontaneous reaction.
Yeah.
Um, I know what it's like to have unnecessary uh, repairs because a person, a child with a diagnosis, couldn't control themselves in that moment, but they have extreme sorrow after it's all over. But then,
Yeah.
hey, now you're sorry, I'm sorry, and we've got these holes in our walls. So if I can at least help somebody who's going through that same thing not feel so alone and encourage them that you can get through it, then that's what this is for.
So, y- you know, I went through things in my life too. Our family went through things with our son too, health issues and all. And one thing that I know is like it really made our family stronger, right? And so as time went on with your son, and the more of this, the behaviors happen, do you feel like it just knitted you all a lot closer?
Yes, yes, and I hesitate because one of the beautiful things about my family is that we're all close. My son, even though I'm talking about these behaviors that he can't control, he's a beautiful individual. I love him.
Yeah.
He
Oh yeah.
is an amazing young man, and
Hmm.
in no way do I want people to feel like, he's out of control all of the time. There are
Right.
some challenges that he has that we've had to learn to get through. But the family unit, we are 10 toes down for each other. It just hurts because in those moments you can't reach the one.
Yeah.
All the love that you're pouring in the moment, they can't feel it. So that is where things ache the most. But in
Right.
terms of the love and support, yes, because we had to go through that, yes, we love on each other harder. We love intentionally. And when times are good, they're really good. We may be lacking in some other areas, but when James Party of Five comes together to do whatever it is, I mean, it doesn't take much. We will load up and ride down to the battery and sit there and watch the sunset,
Yeah.
grab some ice cream, and that's as good as Disney World to us.
Yeah.
And that's the way we've rolled for a long time. We really do value spending time with each other. If we've had a hectic week, the kids will say, "Hey, when are we all going to go and do something together?" So we are a strong family, and this, as much as it has hurt us going through this ordeal with those um, unpredictable behaviors, it has brought us together in a way. But I'd be lying if I said there weren't times where it really, really hurt,
Oh,
where it
absolutely.
really, really sucked. Yeah.
So how and I know the family dynamic, the support, and your lovely wife, all those matter a whole lot. But like you're going in, daily to deliver news, and then you got your own news happening sometimes at home, you know?
Yeah.
And so, like, what does that do to your heart when you're delivering news or when you have to look at that camera lens and deliver news and knowing that 20 minutes before you could have gotten a phone call where you were needed? What is your heart saying when that happens?
Let me answer that this way. I'll go back just a little bit. When I first started working here, hurricanes were a thing. I'd never really had to worry about hurricanes where I was from. But it was my job to cover the hurricane. So anytime we had a hurricane forecasted, I told the family, hey, you've got to pack up, you've got to evacuate. They didn't
Yeah.
like it because I wasn't leaving. I was going to be here, and they didn't want to go and leave me. But I would try to explain to my wife, I can't do my job if you're here and I have to worry about how safe you are, you know. So that was the thing. So to answer your question, it's difficult to do my job when I know that things aren't good at home, when I know that there's potential for crisis at home. It is very difficult to sit there and read the news that's on the prompter. Um, I had the privilege of covering Dr. Jill Biden a few years ago when she visited Charleston,
I remember that.
and it was supposed to be a memorable day for me. And it was memorable for all the wrong reasons. My son was having a very rough day, rougher than most. And my wife was having to deal with all of that. And normally I would say, hey, boss, I've got to go home and take care of some things. But I couldn't even do that. I was in the presidential motor pool. I couldn't leave. I wasn't in control of when I got back to my vehicle. And I could only sit and listen to what she was telling me. And it was the most hopeless feeling. I can't do anything about it. Oh,
Mm.
and you're supposed to continue to do your job at a high level. Uh, so it's tough. It can be tough. It can really be tough.
What would you say was probably the most impactful chapter in your book?
I don't know, Eric. That's a really good question. They were all impactful for
Hmm.
me, um, but I think I'd have to let each individual reader determine which
Hmm.
was most impactful for them. I don't know if I can choose one that was more
Yeah.
impactful because they
Right.
all go into the chemistry of who I am now and what the story is. So, um, probably, probably the most impactful, the one that allowed me to get beyond uh, the frustration is the last one, where I was able to spend some time with my dad when he had a moment of clarity, and he shared with me some advice. That was probably the most impactful.
If you don't mind sharing, what did he say?
Well, um, I asked him, what do you do when you've prayed and you fasted and you've cried and you've petitioned God and it doesn't seem like He's going to answer your prayer? And that question was wrapped up in my personal troubles at home and watching him deteriorate the way he was.
Hmm.
And I really don't know what I expected him to say. Um, you know, mm, if he had said, son, I don't know, look at me. I thought I'd be healed by now, and I'm not, so I don't know what to say. Had he said that, I could have accepted that. I was like, exactly. So what's the point? Why are we doing this? But that's not what he said. In true Leroy James fashion, he looked at me and he said, "Trust God."
Wow.
And so I, I pressed. I said, "Well, yeah, okay, but when you've done all of these things at some point, what happens if it just doesn't change? What if he doesn't change what I'm
Hmm.
asking him to
Hmm.
do?
Hmm.
And he looked at me and he said, trust God anyway. And that was it. That was my answer. And I knew I wasn't going to get any more than that or anything any different than that. And so he, that wasn't necessarily like his advice at the height of my relationship with him. Years ago, he could have expounded and gone and drawn from stories and experiences, but he was weak, he was frail, he was bed confined at that time. And there are times when I would go to him and maybe he didn't recognize who I was, but this particular time he did. And that was the advice he gave me. So that's what I got to do. I've
There's
got
there's
to,
a, there's a lot of comfort in those simple words.
yeah,
There's a
I've got to do what dad said. If dad is in this state right now and he can trust God, then I've got to trust God anyway. And from that, that began to be the foundation that my faith began to grow a little bit more.
Wow, that's strong, man. So, I've heard you talk about, like how your lovely wife supported you. Tell me about the children. Now, because the children, they witness what you witness, and now they get to read what you wrote. So what is this like for the children? What's the book like for your children as well?
I don't know. They haven't read it yet. Um, they've read a chapter here and there,
Hmm.
but I asked them, we let them know, hey, we've written a book. It's about this, my girls, and made it available to them. And I noticed that, they hadn't read it. And, I don't want to uh, pressure them to read it, but eventually I asked, why haven't you read it? And they're like, well, we lived it. And
Wow.
it's, we don't, yeah, I think one of my oldest daughters says she will read it, but she
It's in her
has to
own time.
be in a, yep, she
Got
has
to
to
be in
be
their
in
own time.
a headspace to handle it. It's like reliving trauma. Um, you know, there are some wonderfully brilliant bright spots within this book, within this story. It's not all
Yeah.
doom and gloom. It's
Yeah.
not all heartache. There's some wonderful bright spots, but to get to them, you do kind of have to go through the muck and the mire. And I can understand that several of my other family members were the same way. They're reading it to support me, but at the same time, they're reading at their own pace
Yeah.
because
They're digesting.
again, yeah, yeah, in small doses, uh, because as they read it, those memories come flooding back, uh,
Yeah.
especially with dad. They know about some of the struggles that we've had, but again, they don't know everything. Well, they kind of do now that the book is out. So yeah, so to answer the question about my girls, they'll read it. They're reading parts of it, but they have told me that they're extremely proud of me for doing it.
That's good.
They're they know the content of the book, and they they're fine with it, and
Yeah.
they they feel like it's necessary. They're proud of me for doing it, but in terms of reading it on their own, they will when they can, and I accept that answer.
Raphael, what do you want, friends and colleagues to feel when they read it? And then what do you want them to understand? Because there's two things. Do you want them to understand what you're going through? How do you want them to feel? How do you want people to feel after they've read it?
That's another really good question because I don't know, Eric. that I let me answer the last part first. I want them to feel hopeful. I want them to feel encouraged, inspired, uplifted. Uh, that's how I want them to feel. Outside of that, though, I don't really know that I want them to know the the most intimate parts of my life, the hurts of my life. I don't know that I really want them to. They can. I'm inviting everyone to, of course, but
Hmm.
this book isn't for everybody. It's not for everybody. It's for the people who have found themselves in the same situations that I have. It's the people, the parents, the siblings who are trying to be a support to a family member or loved one who has some challenges when it comes to mental health. It is for caregivers who are having to learn a skill set that they were not trained for, having to learn it
Yeah.
on the job. It is for those who have had a faith, a trust, and a belief in God and an expectation that everything you learned in church and heard the preacher say it's going to happen if you do X, Y, and Z. It's for those who have done that and it hasn't worked out for them. And what do you do now? So it would be great uh, if people read the book,
Hmm.
yes, but my mission is for those who need it to read it and grow. Does that make sense?
It does. You said hopeful, inspired and uplifted. Do you feel that way?
I do. I do. And even after I thought the book was done, it wasn't. I got several more
Mm.
chapters, and they are the chapters where God was dealing with me the most. And to me, those were the ones that really um, helped my understanding of my relationship with God and my expectations of what could happen. He was gentle with me, even though I wasn't as gentle with him when I expressed my thoughts and feelings on paper. Um, he was what I think you would hope a God of love would be.
Wow.
Um, so yes, yes, that is what I hope people see. But again, that didn't even come. That came after I thought I was done writing.
Throughout this whole process, I mean, there's the idea of writing the book, the sitting down, having the discipline to do it. What did you find out the most about Raphael James when you wrote this book?
I found out that there were parts of me at 50 something years old at the time that hadn't had the opportunity to properly heal, who hadn't had
Mm. an
an opportunity to speak
Wow.
and be heard um, by the 50-year old me, 50-ish year old me. Um, I realized there's an 8-year-old boy still inside of me that still hurts at times. I was able to see myself in certain past situations and see maybe why I responded this way here and there. As I was writing, it began to unlock some thoughts and some memories
Mm.
from years ago that I just dismissed, but now they come rushing back to the front of my mind, and I'm in that moment again, and I'm feeling those emotions again, and I'm realizing that I'm feeling those emotions now because I can sense the same kind of feeling that I was going through at the time. So there's no waste in anything that God has made. I'm a firm believer in that. Everything is for a reason. Everything is built to help us get to the next level. And
Yeah.
some of that pain, it was necessary for me to revisit and figure out why it hurt, figure out
Wow.
why I'm having to deal with this now so that I can move forward. And one of the chapters is called Talking to Myself. And that's where I kind of sit down and I talk to a younger version of myself. And it's really
Wow.
quite eye-opening, even though I wrote it kind of as a kind of a writing exercise. The information that came out of it, the information that came from the other end of the pen, it was eye-opening.
Yeah. You almost had to have, like, not in a bad way, but its own, like, out of body experience looking at yourself when you write it. And,
Kinda, yeah.
were you amazed on the things that you can just recollect, or was everything just so vivid for you?
I was amazed and it was very vivid. And I was amazed at how vivid it was because, I usually, when I'm done with the memory, I shove it back into the crevices of my mind. There will be people who, my sister, or will be recounting a story of something that happened when we were kids. And sometimes I have to sit and think, and then, oh, yeah, yeah, that did happen. So these memories get jammed and pushed, and just doing these
Yeah.
simple writing exercises, they come back. And if it was a good memory, I get to enjoy those feelings all over again. Playing in the backyard, getting into trouble with my friends. Um, and if it was a bad memory, then I get to sit with that as well. And I think that's therapeutic. And I think there's a purpose for that. And I think probably most of us need to do the same thing. And again, that's something that I'm trying to encourage. If
I
you don't
want to
have
ask you this.
anybody I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I want to ask you this too. You bring up such a great point, and hearing you kind of go back to the stories and talking about the 8-year-old you. I want to ask you this question. I want to go to break after this. There's two people. There's Raphael James when he goes through the threshold of his door, and then the market knows you as Raphael James, the journalist. How do you separate the two? I know when you go inside a station, you got to deliver news. I know that part. But when you are in public, they only see one, but there's truthfully two on the inside.
Somewhat. I feel like I try not to live a dual life. I try to
Okay.
be what you see is what you get.
Got it.
If
Got it.
if you come up to me in the street, I'm going to respond the same way as if you came up to me in my neighborhood. Um, Maybe it may be two people as far as my family's concerned, because I can really let my hair down a little bit more when I'm at
Right.
home. But for the most part, I think I'm pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Um, I think so. Somebody else might think differently, but I think I'm pretty much the same.
All right. I
Excuse me.
want us to take a break, and I want to come back, and I want to talk about the journalistic side of you and some
Okay.
interviews that you've done and things that actually meant a whole lot to you. All right. So, going
Yes,
forward,
sir.
Nation, we're going to take a break, and we're going to be right back.
Hold tight, listeners. We're taking a brief pause. Going forward, we'll be back shortly with more insightful conversations.
If your company feels like chaos and finding anything is like solving a mystery, get Trainual, the app that turns all your scattered company knowledge into an organized playbook, where every employee question has an answer, just a simple search away. Where all of your processes and policies are documented, roles and responsibilities are defined, and delegating anything is as easy as drag and drop. Trainual, it's how you get your operations under control and how you deliver the ultimate onboarding and training experience.
Running your law firm is a serious business. when you actually got out of law school, they didn't teach you how to market your business, or they didn't teach you exactly the business of running a law firm. And that's what we do. We want to be able to come in and work with you and your firm so that, one, you can start marketing your firm correctly, coach you on how to get to the next level and where you want to get your law firm. And most importantly, we don't want you to be one of those law firms who are a laughing stock of the community. Don't hire a marketing agency that's going to make you look like a buffoon online or social media and try and make you to be something that you are not. It's time for you to start running your firm the right way. Go to VIPmarketing.com. This episode of Going Forward is brought to you by Optimizer, an award-winning PPC management tool used by advertisers worldwide. Save time and boost the performance of your PPC campaigns on Facebook, Amazon, and Google or Microsoft. Get a 14-day free trial at optimizer.com/go/VIP.
Welcome back to Going Forward. We hope you're recharged because we've got an exciting second half waiting for you. Get ready to dive deeper and be inspired. Let's keep the momentum going.
I want to welcome back our listeners and viewers to Going Forward. I am sitting here with Mr. Raphael James. We're talking about his book, talking about his career, family. And Raphael, I want to tell you, thank you, man, for sharing a lot of that, man. And I'm hoping that someone can hear you, even someone that doesn't know you or someone that does know you, hear that story. They can be inspired by reading the book and kind of figure out things to do for themselves and for their families. Because you know, you've done a lot of it and you still got more to go, but someone might be entering that stage and not know what to do. So hopefully this can serve as, not, the handbook, but a guide for them to kind of get the help and seek the help that they need. Right.
I like the way you said that. Absolutely. And maybe just the first thing on the step. Maybe you just need to get it out. Maybe you just need to see another way of dealing with some of the things. So yes, if that is what it can be for somebody, I'd be grateful for that.
There is the journalistic side of you, man. Like you said, you were around the first lady. I mean, you've in 23 years in this market, you've done some really impactful interviews and you've interviewed some really influential people. Who would you say has been the most influential to you that you've interviewed? You don't have to say me. You don't have to say me. You don't have to say
You're definitely up there. I had an opportunity to go to the White House and interview Vice President Biden at the time. That was a seminal point of my career. That whole experience was really nice. But I've had the opportunity to talk with Andrew Young, Ambassador
Oh,
Young, former mayor of Atlanta. He has so much wisdom. Um, his life experiences are so rich. I
yeah.
really enjoyed sitting down and talking with him. There really are so many. When people ask me that, what's the most important story you've ever worked on? Hundreds of stories just flood the front of my brain, and it's hard to
Mhm.
choose just one. Um, but those are definitely some of the biggest names that I've had the opportunity to talk with and interview. And of course, maybe the most impactful story of my career would be Mother Emanuel and
Yeah.
everything that happened that night and the months and years after that. And the friends that I've made from with the family members, the relationships that we've made there that are still strong
Mhm.
today, and just
Mhm.
watching many of them, their resilience to move forward and impact the world positively. It's been very rewarding to watch
Yeah.
that and be a part of that.
I think Charleston definitely learned a lot from, Emmanuel 9. And I still remember that day. I remember that story. And I can remember it was like a glimpse of you crying, you know, when all of that happened, man. And things like that have to be hard to report. And how do you go home after that? and be dad. And also, now that we know like what was going on in the book, it was not hard for you, but to have one of the worst stories in our city's history and then to go home.
Yeah, it's like everybody else. I had to internalize, I had to process the news that I had been giving out. I believe in one interview, or maybe several, I talked about that night being on the scene, reporting live, uh, not knowing officially what had happened or how many people were gone, but knowing that some did not make it. In
Yeah.
that moment, in that moment before we knew names of the deceased, in that moment, there was still hope. There was still hope that maybe Senator Pinckney wasn't one of them. There was still hope that, some of the others did not expire. Um, I was able to continue to move on the surface because there was more work to do. There's still more information coming in. So as I'm reporting, I'm not processing
Wow.
necessarily, not internally. As I'm reporting, I'm doing my job. Well, this is what new information we've had come in, blah, 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 blah. They're looking for XYZ. Once every camera, microphone, everything I had with me that night, the battery died. And it got to a point, there was nothing else I could do. I could not broadcast on my phone. I couldn't broadcast with the cameras that we had. And at that point, it was over. And at that point, the heaviness of what had happened just kind of hit me. And I broke down. Uh, and taking it home, you have to deal with it, and you're having to deal with it publicly. And I thought I was holding it together very well, but years later, people come up to me and tell me they could see it all over my face. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
But, I think that goes along with the statement that you said that there's not two yous, there's one. And then, that what they see is kind of what they get, you know?
Yeah.
And that's the human side of you. And I think people, I know journalists are supposed to be very stoic, but, I think that's the side that, uh, that needed to come out and people needed to see, and I think it probably made people, believe more, and trust more of, especially the reporting from you, you know? You've mentioned that word hope and hopeful a lot throughout our conversation. Why?
Mhm. If we don't have hope, life is really dark. Um, Without hope, it's I think a life that's not worth living. There's
Mhm.
always room for hope. And I try to find the hope in any dark situation that we're going through, any dark situation that we're faced with, because the hope is what motivates you to keep moving. Otherwise, despair sets in. And
Yeah.
so you have to ask yourself, do I want to live in despair? Do I want to live in the funk of what I perceive this to be? Or do I want to push forward for hope? Hope feels lighter. Hope feels positive. Hope feels, even though I don't see it, hope feels better than fear.
What does Raphael James hope for?
I am hopeful that in my lifetime, I can be a part of moving the world forward in some way. I can be a part of
Wow.
allowing people or facilitating conversations for people to see things from a different lens. I am hopeful that our society can get to a place where we can disagree with each other without trying to kill each other. I'm
Yeah.
hopeful that we can get to a place where I can say, man, Eric, I disagree with that, but I love you, brother. I really do. And how can we get together and find some common ground? I am hopeful that our society will get back to that without uh, throwing each other away simply because we have different ideologies. I'm
Yeah.
hopeful from a medical perspective that cures will be found for some of the diseases that rob our loved ones of their memory, Alzheimer's, dementia. Um, and I am hopeful that if there is no cure, that God will provide us the strength and the grace to move on in that area in a way that brings as much positivity as we can possibly have. Those are some of the things that I'm hopeful for.
How much have you grown, Raphael?
I hope a lot. I see some growth, especially since I've been here. I moved here not knowing really anybody in this town, and this is, you know, people here in Charleston are so much my family. I so appreciate seeing them and having that bond and the love that they
Mm.
receive me with. I've grown as a individual. I've grown as a journalist. I've grown as a father and a husband. I've grown spiritually, and that's probably the most important area because I've grown to a
Mm.
space where I can still accept God when I don't accept some of the ways that my life is playing out.
You mentioned, 8-year-old Raphael. I don't know why you chose 8-year-old Raphael when you said that when you were talking earlier, but um, you've gone through a lot, you've seen a lot, you've done a lot. Never knew a guy growing up. Well, one day you'd be in the White House and interviewing the vice president, being around the first lady. But what would you go back and say to that young you, man, that just didn't know,
I
that
would
young you
tell
before it all?
I would tell him to trust himself more. I would tell him that even though he felt like he didn't fit in and belong in a lot of spaces, it's okay. I would tell him to lean into those things that he liked, whether his friends liked it or not. I would tell him that it's okay to be exactly who you are, and it's okay to stand up for others who are being downtrodden. Because I feel like I spent a lot of my childhood and teenage years just trying not to be the target, whereas I could have been maybe a help. I could have stood up. I could have advocated for somebody else who was being bullied or not being treated fairly. In some cases, I think kids just try to survive childhood rather than trying to go through being everybody's hero. But
Wow.
those are some of the things that I would tell young Raphael.
You mentioned Mr. Leroy James, your dad,
Yes, sir.
and you
I
said,
don't know why this
you
just came
asked
up
him, and
like that.
um, he said to you, trust God, right?
Mhm.
What do you say to Grant?
The same. Uh, Grant has to have his own relationship with God. And so we know how to, when we're getting into a place where we're feeling overwhelmed, we know how to maybe quote a scripture. We know how to say a prayer. We know how to ask God to see us through. Uh, and it really fills my heart when I see him do those things without me having to remind him of it. So, uh, Grant, he's the champ. I call him the champ. He's the champ. Grant is going to
Yeah,
change
we
your
learned
life.
from them, man.
You just wait. I've got some really. great kids. Jaden is incredible at what she does. She has a pure heart. She's very smart. She's a gifted editor. She's a whiz with social media. Nia is an advocate. Oh my gosh, she could be a lawyer the way she'll put a case together, the way she defends her brother, the way she has such a tender heart and helpful to young people. And I think our family now, because of what we've gone through with Grant, we have a special place in our heart for families with special needs. So, um, yeah, you don't want
Yeah.
to mess with the special needs family around us because we are not going to just sit there and let it happen.
Mm. You had an interview with Nancy Mace uh,
Yes.
lately, and it's gotten a lot of online attention, and I'll say this, I'll let you, say what you have to say, but from a lot of onlookers, you did the right thing and you responded the right way. I've always been told you never pig wrestle. You never get in the mud and you never wrestle. I'm not saying saying anything, but you didn't get in the mud.
Mhm.
You didn't get in the mud in anything, and it's always tough when people are looking at two people wrestle in the mud because you don't know which one's really dirty, but you kept yourself clean, I would say, in that whole thing.
Okay. Okay.
So, you know, was there a moment of shock with the
Oh,
response to you?
100%. Um, that wasn't what I was expecting. And just a little context, she was here for Vice President J.D. Vance's trip. I was selected to go out and cover that. He came to Newport Still in Berkeley
Mhm,
County, and Nancy Mace was there. The rumor is the word on the street is she is running for governor. So
mhm,
she was there, and her press people said, "Hey, Nancy Mace is here. Congresswoman Mace is here. She'll be doing interviews if you like." So I mean, we're there. She came to us, so yeah, we turned the cameras on, and she had been talking about the question before. The reason I asked her about the town halls is she was telling another reporter that she had held a town hall at Newcore Steel. And, I'm out at Newcore and I realized the security that we had to come through to get here. And so by saying that, that wasn't a public town hall. And some of the criticism that she has faced and other Republicans have faced, they aren't having public town halls where everyone can come and share their thoughts or disagreements or what have you. She had one in Beaufort just a few weeks ago. I think the Ta Island, that's another gated community. Not everybody is welcome. So my question when she brought up having a town hall in Newport Still, I said, do you think you will have any open town halls where everyone can attend? And that caused her to launch into her fake news tirade. That kind of took me aback. I'm like, well, I've heard this diatribe before, but I have to stand up for myself. I have to defend myself. I'm not fake news. I've built
mhm,
a career of being a reputable journalist, and I
mhm.
don't like that you're characterizing me in that way. So I didn't want to cause a scene, but I had to say something. So that's what I said.
Yeah. After it was said and done, I mean, what did you think? I mean, were you surprised? Hurt? Disappointed?
I wasn't hurt. I was disappointed that it had to go down like that. And when she finally got around to answering the question, I was just like, see, that's really the better answer that you could have given without, going into all this fake news stuff. I
Yeah.
wasn't really sure how my pushing back against her was going to be perceived in the general public. Um, because again, it wasn't a gotcha journalism
Right.
kind of moment. It was a
Right.
question that I felt was a fair question to ask and a fair question for her to answer. So I was really kind of not sure how it was going to be received.
Well, the people, thank you. And I don't think there was party lines. People didn't care. They didn't care if they were Republican or Democrat in the line. I read a lot of the comments, and people were just unhappy with the response that she gave you and the tone that came towards you. So, but just thank you for being a Charleston treasure, man. I really appreciate you. And I enjoyed our conversation today, man. And I can tell you, like, I remember walking the halls with you, man. You were always a giant, and you still are, my friend.
Thank you, my
Still
friend.
are,
I
you know?
appreciate that. Thank you for all that you're doing. I've been looking at your growth and looking at what you're doing in our community, and I have to say I love it. I'm a fan. So keep up the good
Thank
work.
you. Likewise, man. Likewise.
Thank you.
And I hope today that you guys, Raphael, tell these folks exactly how to connect with you, how to find your book, because we want to put show notes out and show people exactly where to go to get your book. So tell them.
The book is available online wherever books are sold, Barnes and Noble, Amazon. You can get it there, and you can get it personally from my online bookstore. That's the preferable way. It's www.books.by/Raphael-James. Easy way to do it, raphaeljames.com, and there's a link there to get it.
Awesome, man. And you never know, like he said, he's got more to write, man. There's a whole lot more to go. But also people can actually tune in and see Raphael deliver the news to our community. To everybody who gave us their most valuable asset, which is their time, we thank you so much. Hopefully you got something out of this today. And we want to thank you. Thank you. Raphael, hold the line for me, my friend.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to rate our podcast and share it with a friend. Every share, every comment, every rating propels us forward. For more content, insights, and updates, visit ericelliott.com. Remember, your journey, your story is what keeps us going forward. Until next time.